Well, hello and welcome to volume 14 of Drink the Music. I'm Brian here as always with Michaela. And Michaela, one of the genres of music that you and I both really seem to enjoy. We've talked about it a couple of times, starting way back with our first volume, Joni Mitchell, kind of this folk music song. So I wanted to go a little bit newer this week when I put our votes together for Patreon. And it was a tough one because these were a couple of really good albums. We had the Lumineers self-titled album from 2012 going up against another album from 2012 that went on to be pretty successful in terms of winning the Grammy to end all Grammys album of the year. But that was Mumford and Sons Babel. It took the title this week from our Patreon vote over on Patreon, patreon.com/drink the movies. So Mumford and Sons, Michaela, how are you doing today? What do you think about Marcus Mumford and his sons?
I'm in love with Marcus Mumford. I think I said this, and I know it was a kind of a broad, hasty generalization because I'm sure there are
Mm,
people that this music during this time that it came out were not moved, but this I remember this summer very vividly that this came out. If it was summer when I really dove into it. And it was all of a sudden everywhere. It was at every wine event that I was in. I was doing this kind of wine tour of Texas at the time because that's where I lived. Everybody was trying to unsuccessfully play this stuff in like open mic nights. Everybody was listening to it. People were like, when can I get tickets to go see Mumford and Sons lives? It was this pandemonium about this album. And it was really interesting to me because I love folk music, as you know. The
hmm
the
hmm
the idea, the kind of the banjo, and this is mountainy folk. I think from an American standpoint, this is what we would say, or kind of a bluegrass. But I guess in England, talking to our one English expert, which is my husband, he just said
Yep.
it's just folk music, and I was like, great. And he was like, that's what we call it. I'm like, all right, cool. So yes, I'm
True.
so excited to be doing this album. It is tough because I love the Lumineers too. We're just gonna have to do that in the coming weeks. But I'm super excited to talk about all things Babel, however you say it.
Right. If you say it with Marcus Mumford's accent, it's Babel, but we're probably going to call it Babel. I don't know. It's probably going to go back and forth. So don't hold us to either of those pronunciations. But yeah, apparently, according to your husband and according to Wikipedia, this is English folk music. It has a very much kind of a like an Irish folk music kind of tilt to it, I think. Even though these lads are from London, and like you said, Michaela, if this was in the U.S., we'd call it I would refer to it as like bluegrass or like Appalachian like mountain style of music. So it's kind of these this weird like mishmash of genres that we had going on right here in this part of the year 2000s. So who are the Mumford and Sons? So Mumford and Sons is the British folk band hailing from London, established in 2007 by Marcus Mumford, Ted Duane, Ben Lovett, and Winston Marshall. The name obviously coming from Marcus Mumford and his sons. Not really. It was just a name that was meant to harken back to like so some sort of like old family name or old like family business name. And I really like the name Mumford and Sons. That's a good name. Good name. So what do we got in the band? We've got Marcus Mumford would sing and play the guitar, Dwayne on the bass, Lovett could play the piano, and Marshall was going to play the banjo, which seems to me, on a side note, the hardest instrument of all instruments to play. I can play the guitar very poorly. The banjo seems like 1,000 times more difficult than that. I don't know for sure. By the late to mid 2000s, there was a pretty strong music scene coming out of this particular part of London, and Mumford and Sons would capitalize and start gaining some popularity locally, and then set off on a UK tour, followed by a Glastonbury performance in 2008, and then tours in Australia and the United States while working on their album Love Your Ground, before beginning to work with producer Marcus Draves. Think I'm pronouncing that right. Marcus Draves, if you don't know, is a producer, a really good one. As a matter of fact, he produced Coldplay's Viva La Vida. He produced Arcade Fire's The Suburbs, which is my favorite album of all time, which won Grammy for Album of the Year. The year before this one would go on to win Grammy of the Year or Album of the Year. The album changes its name from Love Your Ground to Sigh No More, which reaches number 2 on the Billboard charts and goes 3 times platinum, gets 3 Grammy nominations for Performance Record of the Year for The Cave and Newcomer. The other kind of notable song, the first song I ever heard from Mumford and Sons, was Little Lion Man. That was kind of the big one here when that got kicked off. And they'd win big here with Babel winning the the top prize there at the Grammys this year. So, Michaela, Mumford and Sons Babel comes out. Were you familiar with the band at all before? Had you heard Little Lion Man? Had you heard The Cave? Kind of those two like bigger hits off of that first album. Because I was familiar with them, but they weren't like I don't know, like I didn't expect it to like blow up to the level of like Grammy of the Year or record.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
so you keep saying that record of the year,
right.
with the next one. But what do you think? Were you familiar with them at all, or?
I had heard Lion Man, Little Lion Man, and but yeah, it was to me. This is something that was like it felt like an overnight success that lasted months. And then, and I know that's not the case because they played in, they had this headline performance in Glastonbury, and I think that was in 2013, was after this album came out. But I remember thinking, I was like, oh, they've arrived, and really they'd been on the scene then for quite some time. But I remember seeing on because I had television at that point. There it was a Palladium was a kind of like a VH1, and it showed just live performances. And so I got to see them perform from the comfort of my own home, which was amazing. We got to talk about whether you've seen them live or not, because I just think that they have such energy. And you can really hear it in all of their music, whether they're live or not. And I think that's part of what makes them so special. But no, I feel very much like this second album that was Babel, really kind of set the tone from an American standpoint, because I think I heard I Will Wait before I heard Little Lion Man. I think that it kind of,
Okay.
for my I seem to remember that I was confused that Little Lion Man didn't come after.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get into all that, and we'll get into the timeline here of things as we go. But before we do that, Michaela, we need a drink that is worthy of Mumford and Sons family cocktail recipes for sure. So let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to whip up this week's drink.
So Brian,
Yes.
you created or found the most amazing cocktail that pairs. This might be my favorite pairing of when we talk about volumes of music and cocktails. I don't know if it's because this is the first time in a really long time we were able to make it together. I don't know, but I not only love this drink, but I thought that this was so spot on for this album. And kudos to you for finding it. You found a whiskey cobbler, which sounds so perfect. It's like, as you cobble, like if anybody doesn't know, a cobbler is a person who works on shoes, but you also because you cobble together pieces of leather and you cobble together pieces of the sole. And it's sounds very folky and sounds very like old timey, and
That's right. Bespoke, I think, is how I described it.
Bespoke. That's exactly it.
When I was going through it. Yeah, I was looking for a cocktail that kind of had some themes or something along the lines of Babel, Tower of Babel, anything with that, anything kind of with any of these songs or lyrics that kind of grab me, and I'm like, nah, I'm not really finding anything too much. So let me just kind of listen to the album and see what I think. Like, where's my headspace? Like, what do I want to drink with that? I'm like, I want a whiskey drink with this, right? Going back to these English folk tunes, some whiskey seems good. That seems like something that you'd have if you were going to visit the Mumford and Sons shop there or something like that. And then I found this one, and it's called the Whiskey Cobbler. I found several kind of variations of this, so we'll talk about the one that we made here. But the Whiskey Cobbler seemed perfect because it's super, super old. So a cobbler is basically like a class of drink that's going to be, your spirit, some sugar, and then some seasonal fruit. I'm like, that sounds good. Let's mix one of those up. Nowadays, we would make something like a whiskey smash, where you're taking like these like fruits and berries and stuff and like smashing them up and then adding your spirit to it. And I actually don't like those that well, because it kind of gets mucked up where you're smashing it up.
Mm-hmm.
It gets astringent from like beating up the fruits and stuff like that. So I'm like, I don't know. Is this going to be fruit forward enough? Is this going to be delicious? And it turns out that it is. The Cobbler, it comes from 1862. It was originally made with sherry, but nowadays you can do it with sherry, which sounds delicious. I'm going to make one of those for sure. You can also make it with brandy, also sounds delicious, or whiskey, which is what we did. We used an American bourbon in ours. So let's put this together, Michaela. It is pretty simple. Take a glass, get some ice in there, and in a shaker tin with a little bit of ice, you're going to go with 3 ounces of your whiskey. Stiff drink, stiff drink. Half an ounce of simple syrup and a half an ounce of lemon juice. Go ahead and put that into your shaker tin, shake that up, and then strain it into your glass. You're going to go ahead and garnish that glass with a couple of slices of orange. You can put a cherry in there if you want, and then some seasonal fruit. We went with blackberries here for ours, and I was worried, Michaela. I was like, you're just kind of putting the fruit in there. Is that really going to like infuse enough? You're not shaking it or anything with it. But it turns out it does, and it's delicious.
Yeah, it sure is delicious. I thought this was a beautiful cocktail. I loved that we didn't have to smash anything because, like you, I really am not a fan of getting, especially if it's berries like raspberries or blackberries, because you get the little bits in your teeth. That's never good. Even when you strain it, it's not my favorite thing. But this had all of that infusedness into it, but it was much easier to drink. It was really easy to drink. It was a little too easy to drink. I could have had probably about 3 or 4 of these. If you're going to drink, everybody drink responsibly. But I loved this. I thought it was dark. I thought it was bright at the same time because you got the lightness of that lemon. But depending on what spirit you're using and what we used, I felt was very kind of like dark and not dark and stormy because it's not gin, but like very, I don't know. It was just very bold, and the richness of it. I think if you wanted to do something a little bit extra special, if you don't want to use regular simple syrup, which is just half sugar, half water, you could use like a honey syrup. That would have been kind of neat. And added maybe a different kind of a deeper dimension to it. But this was perfect as is. I could drink this the rest of the fall, and I think I'm gonna.
Yeah, for sure.
And I definitely think it's perfect for this album because there's so much into it. It's very, I don't know. I just loved it. And I remember taking a sip and being like, this is the best thing that we've made in a really long time. And I know I say that a lot, but I really believe it. This one was so good.
That's right. Once a week, Michaela has her favorite cocktail we've ever made, for sure. No, this was really good. I was hoping that it would hit, and yeah, you take a sip of it, and it tastes exactly like this album sounds. It's pretty wild, pretty wild. You mentioned doing some honey syrup. You could do that. You could make like a demerara simple syrup, which would be a little bit richer. You just use demerara sugar as opposed to your regular kind of table sugar there. So and then obviously you can play around with those fruits. I think the oranges is kind of a must, but you could use whatever seasonal berries or fruits or pear. Now that we're getting into the fall, that would be good. Something like that. So give a whiskey cobbler a shot or try it with sherry or brandy. Let us know what you think about that, and let us know what fruits are your favorites in these kind of whiskey concoctions here, so we can try those out for sure. But now that we have this made, Michaela, let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about 2012's Babel. All right, Michaela. So we have in the year 2012, Mumford & Sons bring us their second album called Babel, and we are going to start it off with the title track, Babel. It feels pretty much like a carryover from Sigh No More, if you're familiar with that first album at all, but everything's kind of blown up here. So the scope, the stylings, the audible quality are like dialed up to 10. Like it sounds like Sigh No More was like, I don't know, like your I don't know, like middle school album. This one very much sounds like your graduate version of that album. If you like the first album, you're going to like this. The album really doesn't pull any punches in terms of its songwriting. Here, Babel opens up this world where Marcus Mumford and or his sons, I guess, are weaving kind of almost like this whole album. To me, it's almost like a series of like Victorian poems of like love and heartache and longing of spirituality. The churning of this acoustic guitar at the start kind of grabs hold of your attention, and then this banjo comes in and just goes nuts. It sets the stage, and we are into Babel, Michaela.
We are into Babel. I loved the beginning of this, or why they picked this as first of all their title track, but also the first album or the first track on the entire album. I thought that was a really good choice. It has this roughness, the vocals. And we should talk about this a little bit because I'm sure you know more than me. The vocals here are very kind of, there's a roughness and not a graveliness, but it's not as clear as in some of the other songs. And we're going to talk about that when they hit you later, just the difference in that. But I loved this this kind of singing, yelling that they do.
Yep.
That is really actually hard to pull off. If you've ever tried to sing this karaoke, I've listened to it a lot.
It's hard to do it well, for sure.
It's very hard to do it well, and they do it beautifully. And like, I couldn't tell at the beginning, but I remember thinking, is that a banjo or is that like 10 guitars kind of like rolling along? Because it's got that, just the picking of it is so very folky, but it's so fast. And, you know, this really, to me, lets you know that these songs this is the king of the build-up album, right? Like, so many of the songs have this kind of lull to them, this like you get the cadence ready, and then it just ratchets up, and then it explodes in the sound cacophony of amazingness. And it's no different. Babel sets you up. It lets you know we're here, we're back, we're bigger, we're better than ever. And I really loved the way it starts out.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned, and that's kind of a recurring theme throughout almost all of these songs, really, is, you know, kind of this kind of like groundswell of emotions and sound that the band makes. And you mentioned Marcus Mumford's vocals here, which don't sound you know, not like jagged or gravelly, like you said, Michaela. They're almost kind of like more like raw and vulnerable, but he has such a nice like tonal quality through it, which is why it's hard to sing if you want to sing any of these songs karaoke style, for sure. Let's get into track number 2 here, Michaela. Whispers in the Dark. Like this lyric here: steal a kiss and you'll break a heart. I like that. There's a warm ambiance that the song kind of begins with here, and then you get kind of swept away, kind of the same kind of thing, right? This fast finger picked guitar and banjo. It sounds like a late night kind of telling of like missed opportunities here, especially kind of at the end of the song. It kind of takes like this little bit of a turn, and it sounds almost like a church hymnal kind of thing, where Marcus Mumford is, you know, kind of imploring himself and imploring the rest of us to, you know, live while you're young.
Live while you're young. Yes. I love that the intro to this song, I thought was really special because it literally feels like you're splashing. You said, you know, you're being swept away. Kind of the water allegories are crazy because I literally feel like there's a splash of sound. And it's not a sound effect. It is a splash of the banjo and the guitar at the very beginning. And you kind of do get swept away, and you feel like you're falling, which is really interesting given the lyrics. Yeah, choosing the idea of like lamenting kind of this loss before you know you found it, and knowing kind of ahead of time that something was not gonna come to fruition. I really liked that lyric as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of those lyrics kind of throughout this whole album, which is, you know, I kind of mentioned it or likened it to like this Victorian poem. It's almost like this Victorian like breakup tome kind of throughout this thing, which is pretty glorious. And that gets us into track number 3, I Will Wait, which carries that on. This was the first single from the album. Really good song here. The banjo is absolutely going just bananas in the song, which is pretty awesome. But the vocals here are so like soft and pure and like delicate, especially when you get into like the chorus when, you know, Mumford singing, you know, I will wait, and like the tempo drops out, like the whole band drops out, and it's almost just like him just singing, you know, these lines of I will wait. There's a really kind of aggressive octave shift at the end, which is really affecting too in the song. That's something that happens a lot throughout this album, throughout these songs, is that octave just kind of shifts up and he gets a little bit more, it's not shouty necessarily, but just kind of a little bit more strenuous sounding to me. And I think that this song, for me, I Will Wait, it's kind of this exploration between, you know, kind of being pained about a love that's lost and kind of being frustrated with yourself about this love that's lost.
Yeah. It makes you wonder like what they did where it's like, you know, did I cause you to leave and now I'm waiting for you to come back? and now I have to wait because I messed this up in the first place. I don't know. There's a lot of that. I feel like there's a lot of that in a lot of these songs. But it's almost choral. Like there's a lot of songs, this one, not as much in the lyrics that have kind of religious connotations, but definitely when they have that, like you say, that key change or that octave kind of change at the end,
Mhm.
I very much feel like it's a chorus calling you home. And this, I think one of the reasons why this song had such appeal to young women like me who were in bars was like, you know, the idea of someone's heart being so 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 aligned with that musical sound, right? Where there were all
Mhm.
these the beats and this craziness that's happening. That's very like I said, the banjo and the picking is so fast and it's so strong, and it's also like echoing the beating of your heart when you're falling in love or when you're in this tumultuous kind of spot where you still love someone but they're not with you, and you have to wait for them, but you know that love is so holds strong and holds fast, and you're being this patient martyr. It's beautiful and sad, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why they picked this to be. I think this was the first single of the album.
Yep.
And probably rightfully so, because it's freaking amazing. I mean, I could listen to this song 100,000 times. It's so good. It's so good.
I could listen to this song 100,000 times. I might have listened to the song 100,000 times. And I definitely would have listened to the next song coming up right after it equally as much because I really like this one. Track number 4, Holland Road. So the album, by and large, Michaela, I think it kind of is like kind of this introspective look at love loss. This one here, Holland Road, it feels probably the most angsty of these songs, which I like a lot. It's a very beautiful song, but it's very cutting at the same time. Your heart like a stone, you spared no time in lashing out are the lyrics here. The song's definitely more somber feeling than the first songs, but the banjo here is kind of giving you this little churning rhythm. It's kind of the perfect accompaniment to the tail, and then the horns come in, which are just kind of glorious. And this album, and this song in particular, has this really, really strange ability to get you really like excited and like pumped up, and at the same time, it's making you feel real like sad and lonely. It's really, really weird, really weird. But yeah, Holland Road, it's one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah. I think I wrote that down 6 times. Like, is this my favorite? This could be my favorite song.
You wrote it down
And
12
that's
times.
probably
Spoiler.
12 times. I really thought this song was so special the first time I really listened to it to analyze it, because you're right. It's got this dichotomy that you have where you're feeling good, you're feeling pumped up, but you're also feeling really downtrodden. I love, so I hit my low, but little did I know that that would not be the end. From the Holland Road, well, I rose and I rose, and I paid less time to your callous mind, and I wished you well as you cut me down. Oh my gosh. I don't know. At first I was like, man, is this like a dueling cavalier? Like, are we actually like, because you think about this old timey, like folky, is this a story? Is this a ballad? And I feel like it's just this love that's been lost, and there's a lot of heart cracks. There's a
Mhm.
lot of allegories and lyrics around cracks in someone's hearts or cracks in walls around someone's heart in all of the lyrics, but I really, really loved that piece of the song for that reason. It's just, I don't know, this one was it's a dark horse, right? Because I don't think any it didn't make it to any radios here that I remember listening to. This was definitely a hidden gem that you had to find if you were going to listen to the whole album.
hmm Yeah, for sure. You need to listen to this album to get that song. And yeah, it's such a great tale, and it's totally really nice coming off of those first three songs, which are a little bit more um I don't know, a little bit more aggressive sounding here. And then we're going to strip it way back here as we get into track number 5, Ghosts That We Knew. So basically the band is going to walk off stage here at this point, and Marcus Mumford's going to take his acoustic guitar and go set it in front of the audience and sing this one here. So it's just kind of him singing in this haunting tale of ghosts that we knew. Right. So we've got the lyrics here, very pointed and very tragic. I have Shakespearean in my notes here for Ghosts That We
Mm-hmm.
Knew. I really like the bridge section here, but hold me still and bury my heart on the coals, or bury my heart next to yours, depending on if you're listening to this in the UK, or the US. But yeah, very, I don't know, just a very kind of tragic tale here in Ghosts That We Knew.
Mm. Yeah, I've got this was so much more broken to me than there's a lot less rage, right? Because there's not all of the drums and stuff. It's so it's kind of the first big dip. I feel like if you're going to listen to this album in its entirety, which is what we recommend here at Drink the Music, but I felt this was a much more intimate look at love that's lost. And so once the anger is out and once the rage is out and the frustration is gone, which I feel like expressed itself in a banjo, this delicate picking is much more soft and vulnerable. And yeah, this is a beautiful song. But the ghosts that we knew made us blackened or blue, but we'll live a long life. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. Lamenting,
very,
lamenting all the death that has come and how it affects us forward, right?
yeah, it's very haunting stuff, right? That you might expect from a song titled "Ghosts That We Knew" for sure. That gets us to the last track of this first side here, Michaela, "Lover of the Light." So this was the second single from the album, another one of my favorites here. The song itself is a little bit more driving. It's got a little bit more rock and roll ballad kind of a feel, I think. But the theming of "Lover of the Light" is just kind of as purposeful and meaningful, I think, as the rest of the album here. I love the kind of imagery of the song. It's part like self-biblical smiting, and part vocal show off almost here for Marcus Mumford, because the kind of the tempo is up, especially from Ghosts That We Knew, and the vocal range is going up and up and up, and being kind of shown off here as we make our way to the halfway kind of mark of the album, right? It's very much it reminds me, if you go to see like a stage like musical or something, how you have like this big kind of number right before intermission, and that's what this sounds like to me.
Yeah, this is definitely the One Day More of the album, right? Like, I love this just because, for all the reasons that you said, right? The lyrics are amazing, the buildup is great, and at the end it's very tell me why. I don't maybe from a musical standpoint you can offer shed some light on this, but why does it feel, with all of this sound, that he is completely stripped and he's burying his soul at the end, right? And it's different than in the Ghost That We Knew, because it's different than the Ghost That We Knew because it's not stripped down musically, but it very much feels like he is opening up, like his heart cave, and all of that is on full display as we kind of go through the intermission here. It's amazing. I love it so much. And I feel like you can't listen to this and really love it as much as it's due to be loved without hearing all of the songs that lead up to it, because I mean, in and of itself, it's a great song. And I think was the second release, right? And it's awesome, but it's so much more powerful, I think, listening to it at the end of these other, 5 songs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the neat things. And we'll talk about this here as we're going into the album break, Michaela. A lot of the songs on this album have a very similar kind of song structure, and which the kind of story gets told. You have kind of this little like churning like bits between the guitar and the string bass and the banjo and stuff like that, and then it gets to kind of the swell, and then it drops off, and Marcus Mumford comes out. So I think that's really kind of a credit to the songwriting, to the visualization in the lyrics, and the way they kind of suck you in. And I mentioned it, on one hand, as these songs swell, you get more and more kind of like excited, like you're ready to like jump up and down and cheer, but the lyrics themselves are so somber, and then they kind of drop out, and it speaks a lot to Marcus Mumford's kind of tonal quality of his singing. I think that is really kind of key here to kind of hammer home, the points is that, we just went on this kind of raucous adventure through the song, musically with the instrumentation. But at the end, right, it's all about this lover of the light story that we're weaving here. So let's take a bit of an album break here, Michaela. So this album, Babel, reaches #1 on the U.S. Billboard charts and #1 in our hearts. Babel is going to win the Grammy for Album of the Year, goes 2 times platinum, and it spawns 3 releases. So you got the standard release that came out in 2012. There was a deluxe edition, which features 3 more songs that are all really, really good, including a cover of The Boxer, the Simon and Garfunkel song there, which features Paul Simon. And then there's a Gentleman of the Road edition, which features those. There's also like a DVD accompaniment with some music videos and some Red Rocks stuff there, where I think they might have done one of the music videos and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. Go check those out. Babel itself, it's presumably it's taken from the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, which, if you don't know, is a story about people attempting to build a tower to reach heaven. The album kind of deals a lot with enlightenment, right? So personal enlightenment, emotional, romantic, religious, and kind of the peril and searching or reaching for those connections, right? A little bit. So I think that's kind of where it's taking its name from. And, following the success of Sign No More, and then this album, Mumford and Sons, was bigger than ever. They were starting to fill stadiums. So they had to change their sound a little bit, which was sad to me. Sad to me. I don't think they ever kind of captured the same magic here, but their next album, Wilder Mind, they're going to ditch kind of that stand-up string bass. They're going to ditch the banjo and go a little bit more just kind of arena rock sounding kind of a thing. And then the banjoist himself, Winston Marshall, would go on then to leave the band. And I don't really know for what reason in particular, but in 2021, I think it was, going to leave the band. So this was, for me, kind of the pinnacle of this type of music. And I understand the need and the reason to kind of change your sound, but Mumford and Sons was very unique, I think, in this instance here, at least in the United States, right? To get kind of this British folk, or like this like faux like Irish folk rock kind of thing here.
Yeah, and it's a real shame, I think, in some ways, because number one, from an American standpoint, they'd cornered the market. So like, they could have done smaller venues that if it was a question of the sound in these big stadiums, right? I mean, I guess that's a decision that you have to make. And, record companies, they want to make money. So I get it, but I also don't, because I don't think, I think it's kind of lost on the reasons why we kind of fell in love with Mumford and Sons and that sound, right? It definitely sounds, I mean, and it can work. I mean, they sounded great in Glastonbury in 2013. They sound really good. Target had this whole extra version of live. They added some live music to the bottom of the album, where you got to hear them live, and it sounds great. I don't know. I don't pretend to understand all the ins and outs of that, but I think that is a shame, because we really lose something when you take away the banjo in the later
Right.
albums, right? I mean, hey, that's what happened, and maybe that's why this is such a diamond of an album in and of itself, because it's so special, and the later songs did sound different. They had to change their sound, and maybe there was no way around it. Maybe it was just an evolution, and it was a foregone conclusion that nothing stays the same. But we can at least go back and kind of re-listen and relove this sound profile, because it is super special. And I think part of it was that we expected it to be something that you could do in a pub, that from an American standpoint, in a pub that's trying to be English or Irish or whatever, and have this band kind of go to town and bare their souls over a pint. Like, that's exactly what we thought of. And
Right, sure.
It doesn't hit the same in later years with the different sound. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of the things that makes this that much more special. I suppose if you're creating this kind of music, I guess you kind of paint yourself into a corner, and you need to figure out different avenues to go down, because if you looked at any of like the like the critical response to this album when it came out. Everyone was pretty much on board with that it was great, but a lot of it was pretty similar sounding to the first album. So maybe you feel kind of the need, kind of the pressure to kind of change the way that the sound is a little bit, because I don't know how many more tales you can tell, but luckily for us, Michaela, we have some more tales to tell through the rest of this album. So let's get back to the album here a little bit, Michaela. Track number 7 is Lover's Eyes. If it's not been clear enough at this point, I really like all the songs here on this album. Spoiler warning. But if I had to pick a favorite song on the album, it's Lover's Eyes. The deepest, it's almost whispery, kind of vocal range here for Marcus Mumford in this, and kind of makes its way through the bridge section here, and it's very poetic sounding to me. Tame the ghosts in my head that run wild and wish me dead, as he says, kind of an almost like a whisper through that. In a similar fashion to kind of a lot of the other songs on this album, it has this aggressive kind of vocal jump to close out the end of the song, as the band swells, and ends with take my hand and I'll be on my way.
Again, I in my notes I wrote for the third time, is this my favorite song? It's I love this. It's so mournful. And again, it's all of these kind of give a slightly different variant of that mood to be set, right? I love the lyrics. Were we too young, our heads too strong to bear the weight of these lovers' eyes? Ooh. I mean, I feel like this was something that whatever happened, it was this formative love that occurs when you're so young, and it's almost destined to fail, and it's definitely destined to change. So as things happen and your life moves forward, you pay a price, whether you stay with that person or you don't stay with that person. There's always a price, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, like at that crescendo when it's I'll walk slow, take my hand, help me on my way. Oh, it's such a lover's lament, but also you're really rooting for him that they figured out a way to stay together, and that somehow it was all worth it, even though that's really hard to do if they were so young. I don't know. I think about like an old couple, that's like 80 years old walking in a garden, and thinking about like how hard that journey was, is what I think about when I listen to this. And that it wasn't, I mean, it's a long time, so it wasn't easy. And there were ghosts, and there was a wild run, and there were times that I wished I was dead, or I wished you were dead even. And it's still kind of there. I don't know. This is a great song.
That's right. Absolutely. Marcus Mumford would marry Carey Mulligan. We've talked about her on Drink the Movies several times. So it makes you wonder.
She's one of my favorite people of all time.
Makes you wonder what the courtship of her might have been like that year for sure. Let's get into track number 8, Reminder. So there's been kind of a lot of exploring in this album so far of like a lost or a broken or a healing relationship. This one, I think, to me, Reminder, it feels a little bit more personal. It's less kind of poetic imagery and more poetic pain in this one. You Never See My Bleeding Heart. This song is pretty short. It's just about 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes, I think. It has more of like a solo, like acoustic feel than kind of the bigger, kind of swelled out, the band sounds that we've heard kind of throughout the rest of the album.
Yeah. No, I think I love short songs like this, because since they are so short, you almost have to pay attention more, because you'll lose it. You'll lose it and it's gone. And I've listened to this album probably about 1,000 times. And I love this song because of the lyrics, and it's just very quiet and reserved. And the reminder that he needs to know where she is. He needs to, like, I feel like you put people on a shelf or you put them away, but you have that reminder so that they're always there when you can go in and allow yourself to feel these things about them as you live your life. That's kind of the imagery that came to mind for me.
Yeah, definitely. And that imagery is going to really kind of continue here in a really, I don't know, beautiful and just a very exuberant song. Track 9, Hopeless Wanderer. So this song, it's kind of like a piano ballad, but it's not really a piano ballad. The piano's basically just playing the banjo part that we've heard elsewhere in the album. That's what it sounds like to me, at least. And then the piano is going to kind of give way before, the rest of the
Oh,
band just comes in and just goes absolutely like bananas, bananas. Marcus Mumford's vocals keep getting louder and louder. The banjo, piano, drums, bass all come in this giant swell, and it's kind of like a jamboree sound kind of thing here to me as we go into Hopeless Wanderer, right? Hold Me Fast because I'm a hopeless wanderer, which is it's a song that's emotional and just this big like explosion of the band's kind of musicianship and
yeah,
ability to make sounds, I guess.
for sure. And I love that this was the first time I remember really saying, "Oh my gosh, there's piano here, and this is beautiful." I didn't register exactly what it was doing; that it was the same kind of riff as the strings before. So that's really interesting. I have to go back and listen to that again. But I love the lyrics. So when your hope's on fire, but you know your desire, don't hold the glass over the flame. Don't let your heart grow cold. I will call you by name and I will share your road. Oh, I mean, every girl wants someone that's going to say that to them. I mean, Carrie Mulligan. Yeah, I get it. I
That's
get why you decided to marry him. If this is about you, wow.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, everyone wants someone that will write songs of their heartache by candlelight on old
Yes.
parchment, I think is what people want for sure. But do people want someone that will wear your broken crown? I don't know. Track 10, Broken Crown. So the band was doing live performances of the song prior to the album being released. Tonally, Broken Crown is a little different than the rest of the album, I think, which is kind of neat. There's like a steel string guitar, and it's kind of serving as like an indictment, maybe an indictment of religion, or
Mhm.
kind of a tale of guilt or regret, something like that. I like the more somber sound here. The rest of this album, if you listen through the lyrics, it's pretty downtrodden, but most of them have like this feeling of like jovialness almost, with the
Yeah.
way that the songs are constructed. This one's definitely not that. It's definitely more somber sounding, and kind of breaks up a little bit. Hopeless Wanderer is kind of this big thing. Below My Feet, the song after it, kind of does sort of the same kind of thing. And then this one's really interesting to me, Michaela, because there's like this full horn section that comes in.
Mm.
Well, we've
Yeah.
heard horns a time or two there, but normally when you have horns come into a song, in a band that's not really doesn't really have like a horn section, usually when it comes in, it's very like bright and like obvious sounding that it's coming in. But the way that this horn section comes in, it almost is like it's flowing in with the music, which I think is really, really kind of neat. It's just like broadening the scope as opposed to being like, oh, and here come the horns to hit that. I like that. It's just kind of a natural extension on the song.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I really loved the way um this got very dark. Because I think you're right. I mean, this one to me, first of all, the religious connotations were really squirrely. Talking
Mm.
about, pulling on your flesh and the broken crown and then crawling on your belly. There's so much around that where it's, what is he renouncing? Is he renouncing this person? Is he renouncing the church? Is he, he's saying, I'll crawl on my belly till the
Is
sun
he
goes
renouncing
down.
himself?
Is he right? He's talking about himself? I'll never wear your broken crown. Like, what is he actually kind of rebuking? And all the darkness in this, I really liked it. It was a very different sound than all of the other songs. And I think it's why once again, I put one of my favorites
Yeah.
on my list
Yeah.
because it's got this just deepness to it that is in a different way. I mean, they're all very profound, but this one definitely had that dark, I don't know, not gritty, but just a
It's a little more angry sounding, I think,
angry. Yeah.
than the rest of the album, I think, for sure. And it definitely kind of the vocals kind of swell and get a little not necessarily angry, but a little bit more vicious sounding kind of throughout.
Hmm.
But yeah, it sounds a little bit more angry here, I think. And then we get into another one of my favorites, Below My Feet. If you listen really closely to kind of the beginning of the song, you hear like almost this like ambient like sound, like if you were just like put like a tape recorder inside of like an empty like cathedral or something, you get kind of
Mhm.
this like ambient like echo. You get that if you listen really close to the end and then or to the beginning of the song, and then kind of this finger picking comes in, and then the song again kind of carrying off of Broken Crown. It's kind of this slightly jaded reflection of life and religion here. I really love this line from Below My Feet, for I was told by Jesus all is well, so all must be well. By the end of the song, I think Marcus Mumford's vocals go like almost the rawest sounding, very jaggedy sounding here at the end of this. And there's kind of a sustained, distorted guitar note that lays kind of this backbone kind of throughout the song before the band kind of swells to this, almost like pinnacle of noise that's both, kind of hopeful and kind of wrathful.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said something about kind of that tonal quality of the guitar at the end. I thought it was really interesting. I actually wrote down this. It sounds like they're doing something with a electric guitar, but we can definitely tell this is acoustic. I don't know how they did it. It's amazing.
Mhm.
Where they have that sustained kind of, I don't want to say reverb because it's not a rock, it's not rock, but it's like I really just thought it was super interesting sounding. And I loved the lyrics, keep the earth below my feet, for all my sweat, my blood runs weak. I really think, again, this is one of those, I don't know exactly if he's talking about himself trying to just center himself. It's definitely got the religious connotations, which coming off of Broken Crown, it's like, what 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 are we thinking about all that you've done? Are you feeling super guilty? I
Mhm.
think he comes from a quite evangelical family, so maybe that's part of it, but maybe he's also rebuking the feeling of guilt. um I'm not sure. And like making sure that you just like keep your feet on the ground. People used to say that when we were kids, like making sure
Right.
you keep your feet
Yeah.
on the ground, keep your
Stay grounded.
wits
Yeah.
about you, stay grounded, don't go off and fly too far. And I find that interesting that in a song about Jesus, they're like, please don't dream too much. Don't get too head, because that could lead you astray. I liked it. I like this one a lot.
Yeah. It has kind of a message and a theme of almost like self-forgiveness kind of in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think to keep yourself grounded and to feel the earth below my feet, which is really a kind of nice sentiment. And that gets us into the last song on the album, Michaela, Not With Haste. I will love with urgency but not with haste, is our final line here. Kind of this album, and by the end here, certainly the lyrics and the stories and the musicianship has been like super vulnerable, and been laid kind of bare here. And we get left with this churning banjo, just like we got, kind of at the beginning of the album in Babel. It sounds pretty similar to me, but kind of the lyrics and the message of this song, it's almost like a call for mercy. Like you've laid your soul to bear through the first 11 albums, and this is kind of like a tortured soul confessing to his heart, be like, just please, I've had enough of this, right? I have no strength from which to speak when you sit me down and see I'm weak. Uh, you know, one of the things that I really, really love about the song and the way that it's structured is kind of you could say that a lot of these songs have a similar structure, right? It comes in kind of soft, it builds and builds and builds to where Marcus Mumford is ending up, almost not screaming, but very much louder than he was, and then it kind of drops off. And this song is kind of built that same way, right? It starts off soft, it gets kind of this crescendo, but vocally never makes that jump at the end. And it shows a ton of restraint here, and I think that it fits, kind of the song and the messaging of this song, of this torturous songs and emotions. And I just love that kind of at the end of it, you're expecting like this one last just blowout of the vocals, and it never comes, and it just kind of drifts off out to sea, in a way almost. So yeah, Not With Haste, it's a really really nice ending to the song, and finally has put us out of our Victorian misery, Michaela.
I mean, or Victorian hotness. Oh, this.
Ugh.
So this is my favorite song. I've decided, if for nothing else, the lyrics itself. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's I could point out my favorite pieces, but I just read you all of the lyrics. But I think my favorite, I think, is as we walked through the fields of green was the fairest sun I'd ever seen, and I was broke. I was on my knees, but you said yes as I said please. Oh my God. Yeah. This is so good. And I'm so glad because when I listened to this album, I was not listening to the vinyl, unlike you, right? I was listening to it via Apple Music or Spotify or something. And so I was listening to the deluxe version. And so this
Okay,
was not the final song.
sure.
And I was so sad in a way. I was glad that there were more songs because I think they sound amazing. But this is the perfect ending to this album because it starts off with this huge bang and this like, all right, we're going to build this tower to heaven. Are we going to get there? And that's in my mind visually over the course of the songs, like the tower crumbles, we build it again, the tower crumbles, we build it again. And finally at the end, we are just completely broken. And then we look up and there's a tower. And you can make this case that he's talking about love, he's talking about religion, he's talking about friendships. This one, I definitely feel he's talking to his own heart, like you said, right? He's talking to himself and saying, I need to give myself some peace. And when you're that broken, needing to be healed and finding a solve somehow that's going to heal you in the same space. That's what creates this urgency, right? Wherein he says, I will love with urgency, but not with haste. Oh, it's the best. So good. It's my favorite song. That's why. And again, it's a hidden gem. I don't think this ever showed up on any radio stations, at least in America. So if you haven't heard it, please go listen to it because it's amazing.
That's right. It is amazing. Yeah, and if you didn't listen, or if you've only listened to the singles, you probably have not heard this one. And yeah, this album is fantastic, Mika. We've mentioned it a time or two throughout this thing, but I've loved this album kind of since it very first released. I got introduced myself to Mumford and Sons. I think it was actually my brother. He'd sent me Little Lion Man, or I'd put it like on a CD or given me a copy of that or something for Christmas and said, hey, check this out. And I was just like instantly hooked. So when this came out, I was just blown away as someone who really liked the album Sigh No More. Like I said, this just basically kind of takes that is like the raw ingredients, and here is like the final product for this, and it's so like magical. And even albums that have a lot of really good songs, this one to me, like any of these songs are spectacular and could be my favorite song on any given day. There's not like a miss, I don't think, on this album at all, which is really pretty special and pretty neat, and obviously why it went on to win album of the year, kind of not out of nowhere by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, definitely kind of took over the world by storm. Mumford and Sons actually performed at the Grammys a couple the year that their first album Sigh No More was nominated, and it might have been the 2011 Grammys, potentially. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they performed with Bob Dylan and the Avett Brothers, who I also really like. They're from our neck of the woods here, so I'm gonna have to go look that up because that sounds like that probably was a pretty magical performance. I would guess. And I think they actually performed like three of their songs, so I think they performed like this 3-song set together of these three groups. So I'm gonna have to go and search that out. So Michaela, neither of us have had the opportunity to see Mumford and Sons in concerts. Maybe we'll have to rectify that sometime in the future if they're ever making their way back over here on tour. Definitely would love to get out and see them live because it seems like it would be quite the experience, I think, for sure. And yeah, I don't know. Michaela, we talked a little bit about kind of being introduced to the bands and stuff like that. Had you heard any of these other songs prior to this week when you started binging Babel
yeah, so I literally this is one of the albums that I did invest in when I heard a couple of their songs, and so I've heard these songs hundreds of times, but I don't think I'd ever really taken the time to analyze them, for the like I did for the sake of this podcast. And I think that if you are interested, if you're just kind of a layman, as maybe most people are with Mumford and Sons, and you've heard a couple of their singles, this album is definitely one to listen to fully, because it's really spectacular for the reasons that we've just described for the last 40 minutes. It's got so much to it that I think is so much more than just the songs that are put out, which is why it did so well and why it won Album of the Year, rightfully so. It's really special, and it really calls me back to a very nostalgic time in my life, but also I think it probably does for the band as well, since things kind of changed after with Wilder Mind and then Delta in 2018. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And I agree. I think, again, we should figure out a travel plan for Drink the Music to be able to go see them perform live somewhere, because I bet that would be spectacular, as long as it's in a pub in the back of a crowded room.
As long as it's in a pub, or we'll just have to put it on the jukebox and listen to it at the pub and pretend. Yeah, I hadn't listened to this album for a few years. When we put it up for the vote, I listened to it kind of on my travels, and then listened to it, I don't know, like 7 more times all the way through, because I could never get tired of listening to these songs, and I'd forgotten just how amazing it was, and how it made me feel. So definitely want to say thank you to the patrons who took the time to vote for this, and ultimately ended up picking Mumford and Sons. So if you want to make sure you are in on the votes, you can go to www.patreon.com/drinkthemovies. We've got the votes, we've got behind the scenes stuff, we've got extra bonus content and extra episodes and cocktail chats and all sorts of things going on over there. You can do that on the Patreon. If you want to let us know what you think about Mumford and Sons, let us know if you've seen them in concert, let us know what your favorite song is, let us know what you think about this week's cocktail. It's good. Go ahead and make one of those up, send us pictures, all that stuff. You can do it on our social medias. That's at Drink the Movies on Instagram and X and Threads and Blue Sky and Facebook.com/drinkthemovies. Go there, send us all your feedback, join us on Discord. Same thing applies to over there. Go to our website, www.drinkthemovies.com, for the recipes, pictures, all the things over there on the website. So go check that out. So definitely appreciate that. And we appreciate anyone, Michaela, who takes the time to like and subscribe to the podcast, including JR 3650 SP, who left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It says, Brian and Michaela live the dream I want to live, enjoying movies and adding a drink or two while watching. Check this podcast and see where it takes you. So thank you very much, JR. We definitely appreciate the feedback, and we appreciate anyone who takes the time out of their busy day to leave us a review and subscribe. Michaela, if you want to be awesome like our JR right there, anyone else who's taken the time to listen to the podcast, where can you do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods. We're on iHeartRadio, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. Whatever you're listening to us on right now, if you're liking what you're hearing, there's a subscribe button. Please press that button. We'd love it if you did. And if you're really liking what we're hearing, please leave us a 5-star review. Tell your friends. Go on social media. You do it for a lot of things. You could do it for this too. I know you can. We believe in you. We are super excited to be kind of well into this musical adventure of Drink the Music. And we hope to be able to share more albums and kind of playlists with you all going forward. We can't do that without your help. We're so grateful for all of the community that you guys have built with each other already. So thanks so much for that.
Absolutely. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and learning a little bit more about Mumford Sons Babel from 2012. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink the Music.
This was a pretty good one, Kayla.
Oh my gosh, so good. Not with Haste. Best song. So good.
So good.